Good evening, folks. I'm John Smith, and with me tonight I have TC Cline joining me in Toronto. My in-studio host, Jason Speedy, is unavailable tonight, so he will join us again in the fall, and we'll be able to pick right up. I imagine in the fall to be close to World Series time and beginning of hockey season and basketball season, so we should have lots to talk about then, too. Yeah,
Awesome.
can't wait for a whole nother season. I mean, should be lots of activities to keep us going through the summer as well. We do have lots to talk about tonight, TC. I mean, I think when we finished off last time, it was second round of both hockey and basketball series. So we'll jump right in with basketball, as I mean, that's probably the most important story for us going forward right now, just with the Raptors and everything that's kind of happened with them. So I'll kind of let you give us the rundown on the Raptors and what we should do and what your opinions on everything that's transpired are too. So
Wow, there's a lot to talk about with the Raptors, and unfortunately, it ends long before the NBA Finals. But I think the talk up here, at least for most people, is how the Raptors are going to be going forward without Dwayne Casey. Was it the right timing? You know, they ended up with Nick Nurse instead of a better known head coach, someone with more head coaching experience, or at least in the NBA.
yeah.
But you know, you and I talked prior to going on camera tonight, and you know, where your feelings were a couple years ago that it was time for them to make a change. I certainly would have agreed with you a year ago, prior to last year's playoffs and this year's playoffs. I really saw it going the way it went. Honestly, to me, a head coach, John, has to be someone who controls the dressing room emotionally and the psyche of these players. And it was very clear that he was not the man who was going to get Kyle Lowry and DeMar DeRozan in the right headspace to get past Cleveland yet again. And so I agree wholeheartedly with the firing. On the other hand, you know, the jury's out on the ability for the Raptors to get beyond where they've been over the course of the last couple of years. You know, they have some talent, but now there's a couple other teams in the East, you know, forget about LeBron for a minute, that are going to challenge as well.
No, 100%. So the thing that I'm interested in the most, I guess, with the hiring of Nick Nurse, I'm not 100% sold on the internal hiring. I mean, this is a guy that they've already been listening to in some sort of manner for the last 3 or 4 years. So, I mean, has that voice kind of already worn out its tone? However, I am interested to see in how he utilizes Jonas Valanciunas. I mean, that was one of the reasons that I was not sold on Coach Casey for as long as he was there. I mean, I think he was a good guy, good assistant coach. I think he'd be a great assistant coach. I agree with you 100%. He wasn't the motivational guy to get guys over the hump. I think he struggled in developing players. I mean, you see guys like Ibaka, DeMario Carroll come in, and I mean, that could just be those kind of guys too that had a couple of good years and then plateaued. But I mean, they haven't really bought into the whole philosophy. Norman Powell took a huge step back. PJ Tucker was pretty good for us, but I mean, he still didn't end up wanting to stay with us. So I mean, I am interested to kind of see how Nick Nurse is able to bring in some of the guys that aren't necessarily the core, your supporting cast, to see how, I mean, Casey did get a lot out of his bench this year. Yeah. But again, I think a lot of this with Casey was just the Raptors had seriously more talent than a lot of the teams in the East. I mean, they're in a weak division. They were going up against the Knicks, Brooklyn, I mean, Chicago.
A week. Yeah.
So, I mean, these guys, they're good teams, they're decent teams, but I mean, Toronto just has that much more talent than them. They were a little further along on the rebuilding process.
And I think they're a better team overall than Cleveland was.
Yeah.
But I think they fell victim in that Cleveland series to a couple of things. One was Van Vliet obviously being hurt, leading that. He was such a strong player for them during the regular season. And then the other thing is that to see Cleveland the way they played in Game 7, Game 6 and 7 against Indiana, I just had that ominous feeling, oh no, you know, who decided to wake up Tristan Thompson? And you know, how can a guy like Kevin Love step back into it the way he did and have a 22-point night the first night or whatever it might be and just take it from there? Really, from that point on, Kevin Love only had 1 or 2 bad games for the rest of the playoffs. So they met a Cleveland team who was really hitting their stride, and that didn't help either.
Yeah, but then, I mean, going a little further on, I mean, we watched the Cleveland against Boston series, and Cleveland seemed to lose their stride. I mean, after they lost Toronto, like beat Toronto. I mean, Boston really gave them a run for their number without two of their superstar players. So,
You know
I
what?
mean,
That team. I love that team because they were playing like a team with nothing to lose, right? And
yeah,
the difference, the only real difference to me in the way that they took it to Cleveland early on in the series, and the way that things fell off at the very end of the series, was that experience of the starting core for Cleveland.
yeah.
That experience really showed itself late in those last couple of games against Boston, and especially LeBron. He came through so huge. But really, it was fun to watch that Boston team because they didn't seem scared at all.
They are going to have some serious decisions to make within the next year or 2 years on who remains with them. Because I mean, you bring back Gordon Hayward and Kyrie Irving into that lineup. I mean, Jason Tatum's looking phenomenal, and I mean Al Horford. I mean, so there's only so many balls that can go around. So I mean, Boston does have the pieces. I mean, going a little further down again with some of the news here, Kawhi Leonard wants out of San Antonio. So I mean, does Boston maybe part with some of those pieces while the value is high, and try and bring in a guy like Kawhi, or I mean, even Paul George might be up. I mean, LeBron James. I mean, I can't see him wanting to go to Boston with Kyrie there, but
I think so. Yeah.
I
No, you know
mean,
what? I think it'd be really interesting that Boston makes a run at Kawhi. I kind of hope they do. I know they have a tremendous amount of assets set aside and ready to make a run. Um, just backing up for 1 second, though, can you imagine what would happen if that Boston team had made it to the finals? Let's say if Kyrie was there, because he's a killer at the end of,
oh,
in the last couple of
phenomenal.
playoff years, he's been unbelievable. And and the whole team, if they had everyone there, can you imagine that if they had upset Cleveland, how much fun that would be?
Yeah, well, if Boston would have beat Cleveland, I think they would have definitely given Golden State a little bit more of a run for their money. I mean, I still don't see them beating Golden State. I mean, just the talent with Golden State is kind of unfathomable compared to kind of the rest of the league. I mean, Houston had their chance, but Chris Paul going down, I mean, I think that hurt them too. But Boston really would have given them a run for their money. They're a lot harder of a defensive nose team than what Cleveland is. So, I mean, Golden State really would have had to work a little bit harder.
Mm-hmm.
But, I mean, I think it would have been a really good, really good series had Kyrie and Gordon Hayward been available. I mean, kind of matches up a little bit better against them.
And I think that was the difference in the finals. Really, was that no Kyrie, really no one to give Steph Curry the kind of trouble, the kind of problems that he had in the past against Kyrie in previous years, or even in the previous series
Yeah.
when Paul was in there, right? And that made the difference in the Houston series, and I think it made a huge difference this year. I mean, if you take Kevin Durant and you take LeBron James,
That's
and
pretty well a wash.
they're a wash. Then the next big superstar really is Steph Curry, who can affect the game or change a game, be a game breaker. And he hadn't really been able to do that in the previous years.
No.
And maybe the first year, and of course Kyrie was hurt, right? Didn't get to play. So, you know what? That series, though, to me, Cleveland still had a great chance to win that series. And LeBron had me sold. I was bought in. The Indiana series, the clutch shots against Toronto, obviously how he finished them off in overtime, and then at the end of the series as well.
That killed me, that overtime shot.
Oh, hard to watch. And then, but you got to appreciate it, though, too.
Oh,
right?
100%. And this is kind of, not trying to cut you off, but that shot is kind of another, in essence, another reason why I'm A-okay with Dwayne Casey going. Because, I mean, when you have that guy getting the ball, you don't let him walk up the floor or run up the floor and get the shot off. You take him right from the baseline. And so, I mean, that's, I think, another Casey fault there. Just he didn't have that killer instinct.
Yeah, for sure. Try a box and one, something. Full court LeBron.
Yeah.
Full court him. Deny. Don't let him have the ball. Anyway, in that game one, Cleveland had a chance to win that game and should have won the game. In my opinion, they should have won the game. Forget about the Durant charge, LeBron block call. Just forget all about it. George George Hill had the game in his hands on the free throw line, paid millions of dollars a year to hit a free throw. He had to hit 2 of them, game's over, basically. Still at least a shot opportunity with 4 seconds. And J.R. Smith dribbled it out, but so what? You're still going to overtime tied, but LeBron didn't know that they had a timeout left. Tyronn Lue didn't call the timeout, didn't know they had the timeout. Where are these guys' heads? But they had a chance to win that game. And when LeBron takes that into the dressing room after they've lost in overtime, and he did nothing in overtime, punches that whiteboard, to me, that eliminates any conversation with equity between LeBron and Michael Jordan. It's over.
Yeah.
It's LeBron cost them that series with that one selfish, childish act. He lost control of his emotions. And when you're paid that much money and when you're regarded as the best, possibly the best player of all time, the best player of all time does not do that. The best player says, hey, guys, you see, I told you we can beat these guys. None of you had a good game. I had a good game, but none of you guys did. And I know that you'll have a good game next game or the game after.
Amp them up.
These guys, we can do this. And instead, loses his emotions, gets psychological. You know, I don't think he's got what it takes up here, the strength to be that greatest of all time type player like LeBron did. And to me, he literally cost him the series. The rest of his teammates see him, you know, break his hand or nearly break his hand. The shoulders slump. They're saying, oh, okay, our savior is down. We don't have a chance now.
No, I agree with that 100%. And rather than feed off the negative, he really should have fed off the positive. Because I mean, we've talked about it numerous times on the show, just how talented Golden State is, and he should have looked at it as like, guys, you didn't, like you said, you didn't play that good, but I mean, I did, and we can do this. We've got them. We just got to play the same way we did, and we're there. I mean, I think that loss there could have really changed the series. Because I mean, maybe get a little bug in Golden State's head, like this LeBron James guy is crazy. He's putting 51 up on us, 12 assists, whatever it was, 14 rebounds. Like, I mean, the guy was a beast throughout the playoffs. He was a beast throughout the regular season, and for that alone, that's what puts him in the conversation. But I agree with you. Michael Jordan's not punching that blackboard or the whiteboard. He's coming back and he's going to drop 60 on you the next game or whatever. And I don't think he would have lost track of the timeout either. Yeah.
You know what, if that hadn't happened, I mean, and I didn't know, of course, none of us knew that he had hurt his hand. But I had that game going 6, or that series going 6, because in my mind, they're going back to Cleveland. LeBron's going to get all the calls, like he always does in Cleveland, like it's a superstar-driven league when you talk about refereeing. So he's going to get all the calls. It's going to be a crazy place to play for Golden State, like it always is. And, you know, Klay Thompson hadn't really showed himself well so far in the series. You know, Steph had a bad game 3 as far as shooting goes.
Durant stole that game.
He did all the other things right. Oh, that shot, that shot from just beyond half. I love the look on his face.
Oh, man. And he just stares him down. And then, I mean, I think it was game 4 where Steph had a shot with the shot clock winding down. He dribbles out of behind the 3 and just... So, I mean, that's where they needed to win that game 1. Because, I mean, you can get kind of maybe in the heads of those guys where it's like, okay, well, this guy, we're going to have to do our best to kind of contain him. But with LeBron, do you see him staying? Do you see him going? I mean, there's not enough talent around him now for him to stay, is there?
No, I think he's definitely gone. I've thought it for a while now. I don't think there's a chance he stays. It's pretty clear LA is going to take a run at him. They've really done everything they can, I think, to put themselves in that situation. I don't know if you heard that his son is enrolled in a school out there now too, right? That's interesting. But I think there are a couple other teams that would have a legitimate shot at his interest at the very least. But I think LA is the best bet. I really do. I think he's going to and try and knock these guys off before they even make it to the finals.
No, I agree 100% with that. I was kind of thinking Philly, but would he kind of mesh with the 2 young fellows they have kind of going in there? I mean, how would that work? I mean,
are he and Simmons too much alike? I'm not really sure.
Well, that's kind of what I was thinking, like just how they would blend together. Because to me, they'd be almost a little redundant on the court. But, I mean, you can put LeBron James in any position, too, so But I'm with you. I see the Lakers kind of being the team out there that's going to get him. I see them also landing either Paul George or Kawhi Leonard, or
Yeah.
even both. I mean, Paul George can opt out of his contract, or not Paul George, Chris Paul can opt out of his contract as well. And I mean, everybody that follows basketball and LeBron James knows that those two want to play together at some point as well. So, I mean, do you ship out Lonzo if you pick up Chris Paul? And then, I mean, so it's going to be an interesting offseason in where some of these dominoes fall. With LeBron being obviously the biggest fish, but I mean, you put Kawhi out there, and if he's healthy, I think it's kind of unanimous around the league that he's a top 3, top 5 player when healthy in the league. Two-way player, awesome on defense, like good on, efficient on offense. So, I mean, but if you kind of were to get those three, LeBron, Kawhi, and Paul George, are those not a little redundant as well? I mean, they're all kind of small forward shooting guards, so it's going to be interesting.
I would love to see it, actually. I don't think LeBron can ever quite be what he's been again. I'm not sure. There may just be too many miles. I mean, he's a freak of nature, that body and the kind of shape that he keeps himself in and how strong he is. But I'm not sure he can ever play those 51-point games or 40-plus point games throughout a playoff series again the way he did this year. But if that team came together, like you just mentioned, with both Chris Paul, Kawhi Leonard, or Paul George, Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, Chris Paul, any of those guys with LeBron, to me, you're taking out, Houston. You're taking out San Antonio, and which would make Kawhi pretty happy, yeah. I would say.
Well, I think San Antonio's done now if Kawhi leaves, because I mean,
and you're putting Golden State in a serious spot too, right?
Yeah. The only thing that would kind of concern me with kind of that super team there is the Lakers. Would they have enough depth after those guys? I mean, if you go out and sign those guys, is the Lakers bench, or I guess, I mean, their starting unit now would probably go to the bench. Would that be a strong enough, deep enough team aside from the three superstar players?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's sort of what happened in Miami too, right? When he went there and played with Flash and with Chris Bosh. I mean, they showed that they don't need a whole lot else beyond that once there are three superstars like that together, I don't know. It'd be really interesting to see what happens, but I don't think LeBron's going to come back. I really don't.
No, I don't see him coming back. I just I don't see Cleveland being strong enough or deep enough around him. I mean, when Kevin Love is the only other guy to average double figures on your team during the postseason, I mean, it kind of says something about your depth and what you have there. Because, I mean, Rodney Hood didn't take off like they kind of thought he would. Jordan Clarkson struggled. Larry Nance Jr. struggled. Tristan Thompson struggled. So, I mean, to me, Cleveland, if LeBron leaves, and, I mean, we both kind of agree that he's going to, I see them kind of being bottom dwellers in the East next season.
Yeah, yeah. When it comes to Rodney Hood, I do blame Ty Lue. I think he was short-sighted on leaving him off the floor and too little too late when he put him on in Game 3.
Yeah.
But also I go back to LeBron losing them the series. He lost them the series when he punched that blackboard. Why would the rest of the guys play well? What's their motivation when this guy does this and hurts his hand, and basically that's the death knell for the team, and they know it.
Well, did you see the video of him after going into overtime, and he asked Ty Lue if they had a timeout?
Yes.
And I mean, he wouldn't even look at J.R. Smith, wouldn't talk to him, and I mean, LeBron looked like he was ready to cry, and I mean, I don't blame him, because I mean, he knows that every loss now in the finals is kind of taking his name further away from Michael Jordan as being the greatest of all time.
You know what though? That little piece of video, to me, John, it drives me nuts because A, he should have known they had a timeout, should have known it.
Yeah.
And also, buddy, you're tied. You're going into overtime in Golden State. Everybody predicted you were going to get swept. You should be incredibly high and encouraged and ready to go and say, we've got this. Look, we've played with these guys the whole game. Just 5 more minutes. We got this, you
Well,
know?
and I think he should have maybe pumped J.R. Smith up a little bit and not let him fall on it. But I think that was kind of an excuse for him too, because now that J.R. Smith is the scapegoat, not necessarily LeBron. Because
Yeah.
I mean, like you said, he lost them the game by punching the whiteboard. Well, I guess that was the next 3 games after that. But
Yeah, exactly. No, he was, you know, he was superhuman that game until overtime.
yeah, and then I mean, once overtime hit, it was Steph and KD that kind of took over, and I mean that's what you expect. Um,
Another one, Klay Thompson, too. To me, he's only hitting shots. He's not hitting pressure shots.
no,
He has pressure shots in any of the NBA finals. He'll drill shots after Steph hits one or after KD hits a couple. Then he feels like that little bit of pressure is off. That's when he starts to hit a couple of shots.
yeah, and then I mean, if he gets going, I find if you can get Klay Thompson going early, that's when he seems to be the demon.
I just don't think he's that strong mentally either. You know, he took himself out of game one. He got the 2 fouls and then said, no, I got this. And his third foul was, 40 feet from the hoop?
Yeah.
Way out of position, reaching. Like, to me, that's a very weak psychological player who doesn't have control, again, of his emotions, who doesn't have that realization of what's at stake or what point of the game you are and how aggressive you can be, how much when it's time to back off, right? Let him take the 35-foot shot.
Yeah.
Back off. Let him take that. What are you taking that foul 40 feet away from the basket for? And that's foul number 3, and he's out of the game, and, you know, his head's not in it for the rest of the game. So, you know, I don't think Klay Thompson, I like him. He's got a beautiful stroke. But I just, you know, to me, and an excellent defender. He's one of their best defenders, and he took himself out of the game, right?
So here's kind of a comparison, or could be a comparison, I guess. DeMar DeRozan, just in that mental toughness and just takes himself out of games sometimes. Do you think that's fair to say too with DeRozan? Just that similar kind of mold, just doesn't have that killer instinct to. Because I mean, he passed on a couple of shots too. That really, that should have been him that were taking them and not, I don't know who it ended up being. I think it was Van Fleet that ended up taking both of them. And, I mean, he had a busted shoulder.
Yes, yeah. No, for sure. I think it's not just willingness. I think it's an ownership. It's a sense of leadership and strength, right? Emotional strength. And I just think he has it.
So, kind of, we touched on it briefly, Golden State, Houston. I mean, Houston gave them a really good run for their money. Harden's kind of another guy that when the moments get big, he seems to dimmer down a little bit, I found. So do you see Houston's door maybe closing now, or is it closed? Do you see Chris Paul leaving them? Do you see him re-signing? What's your take on kind of Houston now?
Actually, I'd like to see him stay. I've always loved watching Chris Paul play. He's such a great thinking man's player out there on the floor. He's like another coach out there on the floor, like Jason Kidd was, you know, when he was playing back in the day. Mark Jackson was a lot like that too. But I just love watching Chris Paul play, and I'd like to see them take another run at it. Actually, when I watched those games between Golden State and Houston, I didn't find them particularly well played. No. I was expecting a lot better play.
Well, it seemed to be blowout, close game, somebody hurt, blowout.
They drifted away from their fundamental games that had gotten them success. Both teams, they took turns playing badly. Yeah. And, you know, that Game 7, to see the air balls after air ball and the terrible shooting by Houston, it was...
Well, 27 three-pointers in a row they missed or something. I mean,
unreal. But it wasn't just that game. I mean, it's like you said, when you see a lopsided series like that, it's not usually because one team's playing great and the other team just can't quite keep up. No, it's one team's playing very, very badly. And I thought they traded off on that, and I didn't think it was a particularly well-played series.
Yeah. No, and I mean, I am really interested to kind of see what happens there, because I kind of have that feeling that Chris Paul opts out and LeBron James opts out and they join up in LA, and then, I mean, I think they try and recruit Paul George, and that's kind of how I see it. And I think Kawhi is going to end up in Boston. That's just kind of my gut feeling, we'll say. And, I mean, who wouldn't want to play in the East if LeBron James leaves?
Absolutely. Yeah, it really opens things up.
Because, I mean, it would be pretty well Boston, Philadelphia, and then, I mean, Toronto, if they can kind of get over the heartbreak of losing again to Cleveland the way they did. And then, I mean, Milwaukee is an up-and-coming team. Indianapolis looks good if they can get a couple more pieces, too, to go along Oladipo. So, I mean, the East is going to be not necessarily a cakewalk, but the teams are more up-and-coming rather than established.
Yeah. Much better opportunity to make it to the finals and then lose.
Yeah, no, 100%. And then, but the only thing that I am kind of torn on is I don't know if LeBron James is going to want to go west, because it is such an easier path to get to the finals through the East. So, I mean, is he going to want to go up and have to play Russell Westbrook, we'll say, the first round, and then, I mean, go up against Kawhi the second round if Kawhi gets on a different team? Or, I mean, Anthony Davis. I mean, that's another one. DeMarcus Cousins, does he re-sign with the Pelicans? And I mean,
yeah, I don't know if that's going to happen.
That's going to be an interesting one for me too, because I mean, you get Anthony Davis, DeMarcus Cousins, and I mean, Drew Holiday plays the way he did. Throw in a couple more pieces, and maybe Cousins stays healthy. I mean, that's another team that's going to pose some problems.
Yeah. No, some good talent. Anthony Davis is still so young too.
Oh, he's phenomenal.
And he's a beast. So
and
I wouldn't want to.
I'm honestly sold on Cousins. He would be a guy I would love to see the Raptors go out and try and acquire somehow, because I've loved him even when he was in Sacramento. I know the guy has some locker room or character issues, but the way that guy plays the game, he is fun to watch. He's just, you can tell he wants to just rip everybody's head off.
Yeah, I've heard a little chatter about it here. Who knows if there's anything to it, but there's been a little chatter around the city about that being a possibility. That's something they would want to go after.
Yeah, the only thing that I think would make that hard is they're going to have to get out from Ibaka, and they're going to have to get out from Powell. Because, I mean, Powell's extension kicks in, and I think it's 4 years, $42 million, and then Ibaka, I think, still has another 2 years left at 36 or 48 or whatever he signed at. So,
yeah.
And then another question kind of with Toronto, do you think it's time to give up on Lowry or DeRozan? Do you ship one of those boys out for somebody new?
Yeah, it's funny. Kyle Lowry for 2 or 3 years was my favorite player in the NBA. I thought he was a little bulldog and, a lot of heart, a lot of grit. But that's fine during the regular season, and it gives you a great record come the end of the season. They put too much on him, maybe too many minutes on him until this year, and this year he came in the playoffs much stronger. But I don't think you're going to get the kind of value out of either one of those guys now that you may have a year ago. I think it's too late, unfortunately. I mean, maybe you do get something back, but it's not really what they're probably worth.
Yeah. And
maybe if they go to another team, they flourish even more and make it to the finals or make it farther because they're under somebody who can get them over the hump. Yeah.
And speaking of them again, I mean, another one I'm going to be watching this season is Dwayne Casey, to see how he does with the Pistons, to see if he is a good coach, or if, I mean, he rode the coattails of DeMar and Kyle for as long as he did. So, I mean, I am so excited for this basketball season and this off season to really kind of kick gear. I mean, we haven't even talked about the draft, and I mean, this draft is stacked. Phoenix is looking like they're going to pick Ayton. I don't know if that, to me, I think I would honestly go with Doncic or Doncic, however you say it. The kid's 19 and he won MVP over in the second best league in the world. So
yeah, he's been playing with men. And they say his basketball IQ is terrific. Obviously we haven't gotten to see him play very much. I've only seen a couple of clips of him, but boy, they speak very, very highly of him being the best European player for possibly a couple of decades to come across the pond. So if that doesn't warrant a number one pick, I don't know what it is. But I think there's a little bit of buyer beware as well with a few NBA teams that have been bitten with European players that come over with a great reputation.
Andrea Bargnani.
Great example.
And then I have seen rumblings too coming out of Toronto that they're interested in trying to get into the lottery slots within a top 10 pick. I can't think of the guy's name that they're looking into. It's Canadian though. I do remember that. He played for Duke, I want to say Alexander something, but I can't remember.
Yes.
And they're
Yes.
looking and trying to get him. I do want to try and power through a little more basketball, but we do got to jump into hockey because we're about halfway through. The last thing for basketball that I did kind of want to ask your opinion on as well was Andrew Wiggins and kind of the Minnesota Timberwolves. Jimmy Butler, Tom Thibodeau aren't very happy with Wiggins and maybe his effort, like his coming into practices, ready to play, how much work he's putting into it. Do you see that maybe kind of falling apart? And then, I mean, do you see maybe Wiggins coming to the Raptors somehow? I don't know, ship out Powell and JV or something?
That'd be fun, wouldn't it? No, I don't see it falling apart. I think it's a learning curve for Wiggins. He's still young, and like Cherry would say, he's a good Canadian kid. So I think he's probably got his head screwed on straight. I think he'll turn it around. I think you're going to see that the effort will be there going forward. I really don't think that's going to be a question that's going to destroy that team. Jimmy Butler, to me, is a great athlete. He's one of these guys who's got the absolute perfect NBA body, and he's proven to be so tough.
Oh yeah.
And if he could rather than see it turn into criticism, if he could sort of turn that into more encouragement or coaching or mentorship for Andrew Wiggins, then I think it could really turn into something great there.
Well, I mean, Wiggins is so athletic too. So, like you said, with Butler, if you get a guy like him, maybe mentoring you, tutoring you, then I agree that he could definitely turn it around. But
yeah. Again, it's willingness. He's had a lot handed to him young, like so many of these guys do. But I think it's there. I think you'll see it there. In the end, I think I don't think that's going to be a criticism that will haunt him for his career.
And then I guess there was one more basketball. We did kind of talk about Kawhi wanting out of San Antonio, but I want to ask you kind of who's the blame on? Is this San Antonio kind of calling him out in public, saying he's good to play, it's just his camp won't let him, or do you think it's just Kawhi wanting to get into a bigger market?
I don't know the personality of Kawhi Leonard, but I don't like it when I hear this kind of thing from a player. I don't like it. If you're cleared by the doctors to play, and it very quickly becomes evident when you're playing that there's pain remaining, then you make that known, and you make it clear that I can't continue to play, I'm in pain, and you don't play anymore, right? You go back onto the injured reserve. To me, right now, I don't like when a player who's being paid millions and millions and millions of dollars, and it's their job to do this, and they're legitimately, the whole fate of the team rests on this guy.
Oh, 100%.
That's by far, in a way, their superstar and a guy they rely on. So it bothers me. I don't see the blame on the team. But it's hard to know if you're not
Right
in his body and feeling what he feels when he's working out, right?
Yeah, so one of the reports I read is the team doctors tried to say that it was like a quad contusion, which was like a bruise of some kind, and then his second opinion said it was a tendon issue of some kind. So, I mean, if it was, say, San Antonio's medical staff that got it wrong and then just kept trying to parade him out, then I can lay a little bit of fault on San Antonio for that because, as you said, these guys are making millions of dollars. However, if you're not fully healthy and then you're going back out and can re-injure yourself even worse, that takes away your livelihood as well, so you can't continue to make millions of dollars. So I can see a little bit of fault being on both, but I am 100% with you that it should never be made public anyway. Like, you don't kind of come out as a player and kind of demand a trade. And so this whole situation is really kind of messy, and it's really surprising that it's San Antonio and not, I don't know, Sacramento.
It is. I know, Popovich had a lot on his mind late this season as well, of course, with the health of his wife and stuff too. So maybe he didn't have enough, to deal with it, right? Enough time or, the heart to deal with it, if you will. But it also was symptomatic of what's happening in the NBA. Professional sports to some degree, but certainly in the NBA, where star players in particular, they get players shipped off. They get coaches fired. They make changes that really players shouldn't have the power to make. So I don't really like the direction that that's going. I don't really care for it.
No.
And using social media, the access to that to give them more power and that sort of thing nowadays. The evil of social media, it enables us to do what we're doing here now, but I really don't care for an opportunity to take shots one side or the other. It's not a healthy relationship, right?
No, I agree. And then kind of you brought up another topic for me unintentionally with social media. Brian Colangelo, that was another kind of big scandal that has taken place since we have been off. We really should probably talk a little bit about it anyway. But allegedly, he had 5 burner accounts. I think it come out that it was his wife that was running these burner accounts. And he's criticizing players on his own team, on other teams, other general managers, other coaches. How do you see this playing out? I mean, the Colangelos are the basketball royalty, really. I mean, they've been there since the beginning of time. Jerry Colangelo. So does this affect the legacy of the Colangelos? Do you see Brian Colangelo ever being able to get a job in the NBA again?
Well, I'm afraid it does affect it. I think it affects it for a certain amount of people who have a disdain for social media, for one thing, and for professionalism. I think it affects his reputation with another generation, with people who are, dare I say, my age or older.
Yeah.
I think it affects people that are of a certain age and who have been in the league for a long time. It affects them more than it affects anyone else. I think the younger people are able to get past it. Everyone's made their mistakes on social media, I think, probably by now. But this is pretty big, and I think it should affect what he's done. I think it's pretty short-sighted. I don't think it's very bright. You have this crap going on in Ottawa, right? And Hoffman's traded away.
We're getting there too.
All right, so it can be misused in so many ways, I don't know. It's not a good thing. It's not a healthy thing.
No. And then one last question, kind of on that. Do you think the NBA should do more to penalize Colangelo? Because I mean, there'd be tampering there. I mean, he leaked Jahlil Okafor's medical records. I'm talking about it, Embiid, talking about Markelle Fultz. Do you think there should be any sort of a punishment from the NBA? Maybe suspended, you can't come back to work for any of these teams for 2 years, 3 years, indefinitely, whatever it may be. But do you think there should be some repercussions for him, even though he resigned?
Yes, absolutely. I think, there's possibility for legal ramifications, slander, that sort of thing, or libel, being held liable for releasing stuff publicly that may or may not be true. He's not a doctor, and his wife's not a doctor, and so the medical records thing probably bothered me the most of anything.
Yeah.
It's just crazy where we've gotten with all the social media stuff and the access to information. And, it's great for guys like you and I, and we can go on and look at stats, and we can see how people are performing and see clips and all that kind of stuff. It's fantastic. But then when you turn around and you use it to destroy someone's career or their livelihood or their family life, it's just gone too far.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. We are just going to jump right into hockey. I guess we will not do a break tonight. We've got so much to talk about, so I just want to keep running right through. Kind of tying in with the social media, before we get into the last rounds of the hockey playoffs, we'll kind of jump into Ottawa. Mike Hoffman and his fiancée are allegedly harassing Erik Karlsson and his wife through social media. And some of the things that have been reported that she said have been horrible. I don't know how anybody could say that to another human being, whether it be through social media or not, to wish that she was dead or that she's happy the unborn baby. To me, it's horrendous. I've lost all respect for Mike Hoffman. I mean, I guess it's a little unfair of me to say that because, innocent until proven guilty. But when there's been other players' wives that have kind of come out and said, I can't believe it's taken this long for this to come out, it kind of really seems like something's up. So, in all of this, Mike Hoffman, had this all come out about a week ago. He was dealt today to the San Jose Sharks initially for Michael Bodker, a 6th-round pick, I think, and then Ottawa sent Hoffman and Cody something, a young prospect. Anyway, and then San Jose turned around and shipped him to Florida for a bunch of picks. So, I mean, this has to affect his reputation, doesn't it? I mean, his locker room character and...
Well, and of course, like you said, innocent until proven guilty. So there is an investigation underway, and they're going to try and get to the bottom of it and see if it was, in fact, originating from his fiancée. And if that's the case, then, you know, do we find out? Are we able to find out if it was done without his knowledge at the time? And if so, then he immediately has to distance himself from her, just like Ottawa distanced themselves from him.
Yeah.
And if he doesn't do that, then of course it is an indictment on him as well. And you know, good riddance. And yeah, that's going to affect his dressing room time, or it could affect future contracts. He's a young player.
Yeah.
No, it's 104 goals in the last 4 years. He's a top scorer over the course of the last 4 years, and you know that's a pretty hot commodity in the NHL. And he's a young guy, so you know, you could be losing millions and millions of dollars by not, you know, dumping her, let's say, or you know, or by not acknowledging that there's some degree of guilt there.
Yeah.
So, yeah, what a mess, right? Over something is so, you know.
Yeah, and so that's, to me, it's kind of an indictment of the Ottawa Senators a little bit too, because I mean they're a mess right from the top down. I mean,
Yeah.
Eugene Melnyk is probably not the most liked owner in the league, we can say that. And then, I mean, everything that they've done with Carlson, I mean, everything that guy went through this year, I mean, he should have been praised and put on a pedestal. And, I mean, he's the best defense in the league right now. So, but I see him being shipped out as well, and Ottawa going on a full-scale rebuild.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's probably what it's going to come to. And that's what most of the prognosticators right now are saying around the NHL. That's option number one that they think has the highest odds of happening over the course of between now and trade deadline. And then, of course, they could extend them. They could say, to heck with it. We want you a lifer like Alfredson, and, you know, we're going to pay you whatever it takes to keep you here. Or, you know, could wait till next summer and he tests the market, right? So 3 options, and we'll see whatever one plays out. But I see him in that jersey, and it feels like he belongs there.
No,
to me.
I agree. I pictured him as a lifer like Alfie. Just that he seemed to wear it with pride and everything, but I just don't know if everything that's transpired with Ottawa, if they'll be able to kind of mend fences with him.
Yeah, it's a shame. You'd like to see better for Ottawa.
Yeah. So we'll kind of jump into how the playoffs ended. I think, again, it was second round, so after Boston beat out Toronto, I kind of had Boston going the whole way, and they fell short to Tampa, and then Tampa fell short in the end. So should be interesting. I mean, I really thought Boston was going to kind of run right through, just the way they played Toronto, and I mean, that top line of Bergeron, Marchand, and Pasternak, it seemed unstoppable. So.
Yeah, they are so strong, aren't they? And they're fun to watch.
Amazing.
Makes you, you know, if you're a closet Bruins fan, you're out in the open, saying, look at these guys go at that time, right? Marchand's hard to take. He's hard to take, obviously, but I really like watching Pasternak play. You know, I think he got somewhere in the neighborhood of $8 million or something like that. You know, he's playing like a $10 million guy.
Oh, for sure.
He's playing like that. So I think the future's bright for Boston. I don't know how much longer Bergeron can keep up the two-way play that he's leading the league, you know, year after year, right?
Phenomenal.
And a soft guy, obviously, too, right? So, but we'll see. I'd love to see Boston continue. That'd be pretty cool.
And I mean, Washington, they finally come through, beat Tampa in 7. It was a tight series. They had to come back and win 6 and 7, I think.
Yeah, we're behind in every series.
Yeah, and I mean, do you think this kind of takes some pressure off Ovechkin? Because I mean, If he would have never won the cup, that would have been probably, the saying would have been, he's the greatest player to never win the cup.
Yeah.
So I mean, and he vanquished all the demons in one go. He got over Crosby, he got the cup, got the MVP. That one was a little questionable to me. I may have went Backstrom, but
yeah, or Kuznetsov.
Yeah, Kuznetsov too.
Yeah.
So I mean,
you mentioned John. You mentioned getting past Crosby, and to me, that was the monkey that enabled them to much easier. It took so much pressure off them when they did that.
Yeah.
That enabled them, I think, to come back from being behind in the other series and the rest of the series that they had. It was like, well, we were playing with house money, sort of. After they got past Pittsburgh. I really enjoyed too the Washington and Tampa series.
Yeah, it was fun. It was
really fun to watch series. I love the scoring. When there's lots of scoring, I love that too. So Game 1 of the Stanley Cup final, right up my alley.
But it was kind of weird how the Boston Tampa series went, and like the scoring dried up in Game 6 and 7, and I mean especially for Tampa.
Yeah, what? It's funny how the NHL playoffs work like that anyway, right? In the first round, you hear announcers talking about hits per period.
Yeah.
At the end of the period, they're talking about Washington won the physical game. They out-hit Pittsburgh 18-12 in the first period or whatever it may be. And then by the second round, you don't hear it.
Yeah.
Nothing. Right? And it amps up as well every penalty call. Right? Every penalty call, we're poring over the replays. And, I think it just heightens and heightens and heightens, and everybody just gets tighter and tighter and tighter defensively. So if you're somebody who likes the 1-1, 2-1 heading into the third period, then, as a series advances into Game 6 and Game 7, the likelihood of you seeing that is much, much better. Things just get so tight, incredibly tight. And I think guys are gripping their sticks a little tighter, too, afraid of making a mistake, right? Your third line, fourth line guys in particular, right? Really nervous about making mistakes. But you know what? I look back, actually, at the Stanley Cup Finals, and Game 1 was really entertaining, right? It was back and forth, lots of scoring, blah, blah, blah. But Game 2, to me, was the series.
Yeah.
Game 2 was the series because they're in Vegas, and Neil scores first. Remember, he picked that one off, basically took it out of the defenseman's hand, that puck dumped in on the high dump in, and, man, settled the puck and just
corner.
Nailed it. It was phenomenal, right? And that building went crazy. And I thought, oh, boy, here we go. This is the series. This could be devastating to Washington. But like I said, they were in the right headspace, and they came right back, and then they went ahead 2-1, and you're thinking, oh, boy, this is not something that we've seen before. And, of course, then there was, in the third period,
later or something,
the save, right? And the save, and I hadn't put a lot of faith in Holtby and what he could do as well, and been able to keep grips on his emotions. But that save was everything in that series. It was
100%. And then, I mean, you see Ovechkin on the bench just covering his eyes. Just, it was fun series to watch. Kind of one thing I do want to get into a little bit in that series is just Marc-Andre Fleury. Just how well he had played the first 3 rounds to how poorly he played kind of in the finals. But how much of that do you blame on Fleury? I mean, a lot of those goals, he was kind of hung out to dry, a lot of redirections, power plays. Do you think Fleury really played as poorly as the numbers say he did? Or, I mean, was this just a lot on Vegas's defense not giving him the help he needed?
Yeah, I think it was more Vegas's defense. I think his rebound control wasn't quite what it had been as well. A lot of the goals, like you said, were redirects, power plays, but then Vegas did struggle a little bit to stay out of the box at times too, right?
Yeah.
And you can't give Washington that opportunity. They're just too strong between Kuznetsov and even Carlson, right?
Yeah.
Seeing himself like Ovi there on that side for that big right-handed shot. Oshie, fantastic, right? So I mean, their power play was really strong.
I'd like to see Toronto put their hat in for John Carlson.
Yeah, so would I. I said that months ago before the trade deadline. I would love to have seen them make a move for him. but now he's probably priced himself out of, now I mean, Toronto could afford it, don't get me wrong, but they've got a lot of contracts to deal with. But anyway, I just felt like, no, I didn't feel like Fleury played badly. A ton of those goals are second shot opportunities, and bang, bang, right in front of the net when your defensive got to clear things out for you a little better than that. I didn't feel like they had the experience where Washington's forwards were more experienced than Vegas's D. And I think it was far more of that than it was Fleury. I watched a replay of all the goals and all the close calls of Game 2 just recently because I wanted to see if it was what I remembered it, to be.
Yeah.
And Fleury made some phenomenal saves in Game 2, and he kept them in that game, even though this is crazy, but at the time, Vegas outshot Washington like 39-26 or something in that game, and ended up losing that game, right? But that's also disheartening, right? When you outshoot a team the way they did, and Winnipeg felt that.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Winnipeg was in the dressing room after Game 2 or 3 or something saying, well, you're not going to play much better than that. Like, we're pretty confident if we play like that again, we're going to win 9 out of 10 games, right? So, I don't put any kind of blame on Fleury at all. I think it was a team loss. I think there was a lot of emotion involved there, a lot of inexperience involved there. And I think the Washington freight train just mowed them down. They were so physical, too.
Yeah.
It was fun to watch how they're pounding guys all over the ice. Good, clean hits. Don't get me wrong. I don't want to see stuff to the head. I don't want to see stuff to the back of the neck. I don't want to see that stuff away from the play where the ref's not watching. And they didn't need to do that. They were hitting guys all over the ice and taking them puck off them. And that's the way it should be played.
And that's one of the main reasons that Ovechkin, I think he'd be getting a lot more kudos if he was Canadian or played on a Canadian team. Just I think he doesn't get as much credit where he is Russian, but that guy just loves to steamroll through everything. And when he's playing his physical game, that's when he's on his best, because he just lays you out and then he gets the puck and bang, it's in the net. Like, he's fun to watch. He's phenomenal. I think Trotz, I mean, that's another one we've got to kind of get a touch a little bit too. I think Trotz really got him to play the right way, not just necessarily, because you've seen him coming back. He was more of a 200-foot player under Trotz, and not just kind of hovering around the center and waiting for the outlet to go. So, but speaking of Trotz, him and Washington couldn't come to agreement with a contract where he won the Cup. He was automatically re-signed for 2 years at a $300,000 more pay grade. I think that put him at like 1.8 a year, and he kind of wanted to be up near the Mike Babcocks and Joel Quenneville's of the league, which is around 6.5. So do you see him fitting in with New York Islanders, who are currently the only team without a head coach?
Yes, yeah, sure I do. Yeah, I think very much they need that sort of a strong coach, a guy who instills a 200-foot game. Both back checking and forechecking. I think he's the kind of guy that preaches that, and I think he has the respect anywhere he goes now with the pedigree that he has. That is one of the winningest coaches in the league right now, and so. Yeah, I think he could fit in there. I think it was a done deal. I think he had his mind made up before the Stanley Cup finals. But I think it was made a lot easier by winning the Cup. That
sure.
A lot easier for him to go, right?
I think he's only the 5th coach or 4th coach to not come back to the team after winning the Stanley Cup as well. So it'll be interesting to see. I think if he does go to the Islanders, I think they should get on that sooner rather than later, and maybe that'll kind of entice John Tavares a little more to stick at home. I read another report that Toronto is going to try and throw their name in the mix for Tavares too. However, I mean, if they do that, you're not bringing back JVR or Bozak for sure, and you probably wouldn't be able to bring back Komarov. I mean, you might be able to squeeze Komarov in as third line, but I mean, I can't see it happening. So I mean, everybody gets so excited with Stamkos coming up, but if it ever did, I mean, it'd be Tavares, Matthews, and Marleau you could do down the middle, Kadri. Like, I mean, so it would be phenomenal, but I mean, it's going to be a tough sell. The one for Toronto that really established himself for me was Mitch Marner in that series. I think he's more valuable now than what William Nylander is. So, I mean, if you do have to move one of those young guys, I think Nylander's kind of the one that's going to go now, as opposed to before. I think it would have been Marner. So, um,
I'd have to agree. Marner has done over the 2 seasons now. He struggled at the beginning of this past year, but then he was their best player the last 2-3 months.
yeah, I mean, he put himself up near Matthews for production after the last half of the season and into the playoffs. And you can't just say that he was on a good line, because they bounced him around to lines to get the other lines going. So,
Yeah,
I mean, when they put him on Kadri's line, Kadri got going. They put him on to JVR's line, JVR got going. So, I mean, I think he's going to be one of the most important straws there, even maybe ahead of Matthews or Morgan Riley, because, I mean, they're going to be able to zero in on these guys. Marner's going to be missing off season all around. I'm interested to see what Edmonton does as well. I mean, there's been rumblings of shipping out Lucic. What you'll get for him beats me, because, I mean, the guy's still owed $6 million, I think, for the next 5 years.
Yeah, he's going to be hard to get rid of. I mean, you'd have to pay for a lot of that contract if you offload the guy, right? There's even talk about buying him out, which is crazy. I don't think you can afford to do that in this day and age in the NHL, and as a capologist, I don't think you can do that. But they have to do something. They have to do something right away. They have to make a splash. They got to do something. To think that a guy can win the scoring race again this year, going away with nobody around him. I mean, it was just a shame to see how guys fell apart around him this year.
Yeah.
And it's hard to watch, when you see him set guys up and they miss the net over and over and over again, or they whiff on the pass, so they just don't even see it coming, because he's done something that they're not expecting to have get your
it's like, how did that puck get on my stick?
Yeah, it's hard to believe that a guy that good he obviously proved how good he is when he has such a weak team around him.
Yeah.
And he scores all those points, and it's not goals, it's points, so he's still boosting his teammates far more than some of the other goal scorers are around the league. But yeah, you have to do something to reward that guy, or to keep that guy there at the end of his contract, or make it worthwhile. Everybody in every city, when they come out to watch Edmonton Oilers play, whether they're home or away, that's what they're coming to see, because every time that kid steps on the ice,
phenomenal.
An electric happens. He is unbelievable.
I bet Edmonton kind of is regretting some of those trades. I mean, Taylor Hall had a breakout year. Jordan Eberle's looking good. Matthew Barzal, I know he wasn't actually on Edmonton, but it was Edmonton's pick that picked him.
Well, that's the pick, right? They traded away. That was the worst Chiarelli gaffe yet,
And then, kind of sticking with trades and Canadian teams, Montreal, Marc Bergevin shipped out Alex Galchenyuk for Max Domi. Love Domi. He's kind of fallen off the last couple of years, but maybe a new voice will help him. But I don't necessarily know if Claude Julien's the kind of coach to bring out that offensive skill in a guy. But
hard to say. I mean, he's not a very big guy, and I think he's got a lot of heart. Very clearly, he really got to see that in the World Juniors. I don't think he's scared of a thing. There's not a thing that scares that guy, which is kind of cool. You love to see a guy play that way, but really just not the overall skills that you want to see in a guy that you're trading Galchenyuk for necessarily. But
I think Montreal undersold on Galchenyuk so much. Like, the guy's a 30-goal scorer, regardless if he was your number one center that you wanted. I mean, put him as a winger.
Yeah. No, that one's got me scratching my head. I'm not too sure about that one.
And then, I mean, you think about it too now with Montreal. What are you going to do for your first line? Max Domi, Jonathan Drouin, and Brandon Gallagher? I mean, that line wouldn't even crack 6 feet I don't think any of them would crack 6 feet.
Well, and Pacioretty's one of the top, on the top of the trade list, in the NHL, right? Like, wouldn't be surprised if something gives there too, right? You could have quite a different look come the fall if all this sort of stuff happens in Montreal, right?
Yeah, it's weird that Toronto and Winnipeg are kind of the class organizations for the Canadian teams right now. Just Edmonton seems to kind of be in a spiral. Ottawa's in a spiral. Montreal looks like they're about to start a spiral. Calgary, I mean, I'll give Calgary a little bit of a chance to rebound this year and see how they do, because, I mean, there hasn't really been too much off issues or anything.
New coach.
But we do have to wrap it up here. I'd love to talk some World Cup, but maybe I'll go on the Facebook page and we can do a little banter on there for some of the fans or something.
Yeah.
And thank you very much, TC.
Appreciate it. I've enjoyed the season with you guys, and best to everyone out in New Brunswick, all my friends and family.
Thank you guys. Have a good night.